In this lesson, we'll add drawing dimensions. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to use dimensions on a detailed drawing. In Fusion 360, we're going to carry on with our detailed drawing. We're going to add another sheet and another drawing view, and then look at applying some dimensions. So to get started, at the bottom of our screen, we're going to select the plus icon for Quick Add to add a new empty sheet. From here, we're going to place a new view. Using the Base View option, we're going to place a new view from the model, and in this case, currently it's set to front, but if we try either right or left, what we're looking for is a side view of the blade. We're going to change the scale to 2:1, which is going to be rather large, and then we're going to left click and place that design. We'll say OK, and now what we see is an entire left view of the razor blade itself. What we want to do is isolate just the blade so we can apply some dimensions. From here, what we need to do is we need to suppress some of the other components. Inside of the browser, we have two options, a checkbox to toggle the suppression and an eyeball icon to toggle the visibility. In Fusion 360, you can toggle the visibility on and off, but if you don't suppress it, it'll still show up inside of a parts list for the detailed drawing. However, if you suppress it, it will hide it as well as remove it from the parts list. So we're going to go ahead and suppress the grips, the left and right, as well as the blade cradle to focus our attention solely on the blade. If we want to make any adjustments to the view, we can also double click on it and modify things like the scale. For example, maybe we want to use a 4:1 scale. From here, we can now begin to apply dimensions. And before I get started, I'm going to use the geometry dropdown to add a few extra pieces. First, I want to add center marks. Center marks will allow us to select circular references, in these cases these two arcs and the large center, and that'll put a reference crosshair that'll allow us to select this for applying dimensions. We can also add center lines if we wish. For example, I can select these two edges and add a center line if we need that for a reference as well. Let's go ahead and zoom in on the knife. I'm going to hit Escape to get off of my geometry tools and then look at applying some dimensions. For dimensions, I'm going to start by applying a width dimension between these 2 points. Next, I'm going to apply a radius value, a diameter value, and also a width of the blade. I can do this by selecting 2 points or simply by selecting the bottom edge and dragging it down. We also want the full height of the blade and the depth of these slots. So for this, I can select the horizontal reference line and then this horizontal line and apply that dimension. From here, if I'm done with dimensions, I can hit Escape on the keyboard, and now I've been able to apply a few of these dimensions to our design. If we want to make any adjustments to these, we can select dimensions. For example, the diameter. I can click on the gray box below it and I can reposition it. So by holding the cursor down, I can move it to another location. We can also double click on it, which allows us to begin editing. While the dimension itself is going to be fixed, we can add additional things such as symbols, tolerance, and whether or not we want to show dual units. So some of these options can be extremely helpful, and also note there's a representation as well as an inspection section for each of these dimensions. This is not going to be a universal change, it'll only be applied to the dimensions that you select. You won't be able to select multiple dimensions at the same time, but you will be able to select each one individually, modify their tolerances, add additional symbols if needed, and make changes as you see fit. Once we're done with this, I'm going to use the Fit option to rezoom to the sheet, navigate back to my first sheet, and then save my detailed drawing. There's a lot more that we can do in detailed drawings as we're only scratching the surface to make sure that we understand some of the functionality that's in Fusion 360. We won't be using this detailed drawing anymore, so I suggest that you play around with it, add some additional detail, add some more dimensions, make some more sheets, and remember when you're done, do save the file before moving on to the next lessons.